Hello. Today, I want to talk about line weight practice. It's something that a lot of people usually choose not to do, but it could add some variety to your lines. When you're starting out, or if you're trying to do construction of a piece, you may not want to do this just because it kind of falls in the realm of style. And when you are trying to actually construct stuff, I would say you may want to avoid it. I mean, it's just a rule of thumb, not a hard set thing. In the past, oh man, I'm guessing this was about a year ago or so, or a little over a year, I made some practice sheets. I'll put links in the description for these, but basically, they are sheets you could kind of try to trace over to match the varying line thickness. So they're on my website, but okay, sorry, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So I'll show you real quick, right? So we have a line. Let me draw it a little bit larger. We have a line. I have, I'm using a digital drawing tablet. So in this case, you rely on pressure sensitivity to get a varying line width. Like if you put a lot of pressure, you'll get a thicker line, and if you kind of ease off, you'll get a thinner line. That kind of falls into the realm of, I guess I would say, style. Like different artists will use different techniques to have a uniqueness to their work. Some people may not use that at all. If you're using like a traditional pencil, I mean, not like one with a very thin lead, but like one of a thicker lead. If you're familiar with like graded lead, think of like HB or 2B and all of those B graded leads. The more, well, there are two things to it. In this case, I'm just using black, but with a pencil, you usually have like I say like a lighter shade of gray, and for like the thicker leads, you'll get the darker black color that I really like. But the downside to it is that it's very soft, so like it kind of makes a mess, and I'm a bit OCD. So I really love my drawing tablet because I whenever I get like that stuff on my hands, it's a bit difficult to wash off. I kind of have a conniption, but there are various techniques you can do to like vary your line width. I mean, there are some artists who may like do nothing but that. Like they may not do any painting or focus on construction, but like may do line drawings. I don't have any examples on me, but I know there were some artists who have their work in like Starbucks, if you remember when that was a thing. Back then, Starbucks was kind of like the new kid on the block. It wasn't. It was a while ago, but they would feature artists, and I remember seeing certain work that was reproduced for all of them that focused on making something out of like one single continuous line, but there would be like a variety in the line width. Like maybe I I can't remember exactly what they did, but they did cool things. Like they probably did something with like a coffee bean. If you're familiar with like coffee beans, um, you know, I think I do remember it a bit. It was something kind of like this, because when you have a coffee bean, you, I think they're cherry pits maybe or something like that. But like if you look at the middle area, there's kind of like an indentation um, in the bean. Sorry about that. So they would I realized I made it out of two lines, and like I'm drawing this thing from Total Recall, so like I'm probably missing out a lot of the finer details, or like the grooves that exist, like the shearing of the coffee bean face. There was stuff like that. Obviously they were like the person who did it was like an artist who specialized in it, and I don't think it was just like some reproduced thing from Pier 1 Imports, but it was like one single continuous line to do it. Um, so I'm guessing it would kind of probably be more like that, maybe. Oh, I'm totally messing it up. Always use a reference. If it helps, you're viewing these images in a program I made called Thumbtastic. I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but if someone will ask that in the comments, just so you know, if I was smart, I would have had a coffee bean pulled up here, but I don't. Let me get a coffee bean real quick. I'll steal one off Google real quick. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with line work. I mean, it's one of those things that it could be like a whole thing that an artist may do. Like, they may not do any other type of art but that. I mean, it just goes to show the incredible nature of the art field, in which there's like always something that you probably haven't seen yet. Yeah, it was probably a very stylized coffee bean, because, or maybe it was viewed from farther, but it was something like, and I really messed that up. I'm not aiming for perfection here. I'm probably using too thick of a line, but I'm probably just going down the deepest rabbit hole I ever have gone through in my life, because obviously I'm not nailing this in one continuous try. But I would say the important things like about line work, or just kind of varying your line width, is, or I guess they would say line weight, is like, it all has to do with pressure. I mean, digital or traditional, more pressure, thicker line. You could start with a really thick line and then kind of like taper it off. You could start with a thin line, then kind of thicken it. You could start with a thin, then go thick, then go thin. Or you could even go thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick. There are some people who also use ink. If you're familiar with, they're like drawing pens that people use, like comic artists will use it to ink their comics after they kind of like draw a rough sketch of it, or not a rough sketch, but like it's just another step in their process. I mean, they write books on this stuff, on varying your line weight. Like, you could, like, once you have straight lines down, I mean, look, I'm also just using it from I'm kind of just doing it from like that way, but there are other techniques you could use for this. Like, you could use it for, I believe the right word is like thatching. So it's kind of like showing shade using line weight instead of like trying to draw shadow shapes. It's kind of like a technique you may learn, but you may have to look deeper into it. The other thing is, so far we just kind of worked with straight lines. Now, it gets difficult, not difficult, but just, it can be more of a challenge, because I feel like when I started out, it was like nothing but straight lines, and then enter curved lines. So like, when you're kind of going like that, when you have like any type of thing like that, like, I guess it would just be like an arc. There are various things you can do with that, like, kind of like similar before with the straight lines. You could start thin, then go thick, then go thin, and it's a big challenge to keep it like that. Like, I'm trying to draw using my shoulder, but I feel like a lot of this stuff is like techniques optimized for the wrist, because I feel like whenever you have any of those close lines, it's kind of like that. So I guess you could say there's a use case for it. And the other thing you can do is it's difficult trying to match it. Like I wanted like this area, or like I wanted this section here that I'm kind of cutting off here to match up compared to this, because I wanted to kind of like be thick in equal parts. But I find it really difficult to do. I'm going to try to do more of a semicircle. It's really hard for me to end it. There's such an endless variation you want to do. And I would say that, like, if you do any type of work, in my best guess, the thicker parts are, like, if you have a lot of thin parts and you have a thick part, it's probably going to draw attention to it. So, like, I'll put it this way, right? Let's clear this real quick. I'm going to draw a line, right? I would say that, like, the point of interest of this entire line that I just drew is, like, this section here. Like, I feel like the eye is being drawn here. If you're ever familiar with, like, another technique called chiaroscuro, the masters used it in certain paintings, and basically what they had was, it would kind of be like a dark spot in the center of the canvas. I mean, I want to say I saw a lot of these in like religious scenes, like think of like Jesus on a cross and stuff like that, or him walking with a cross. It would be featured in a lot of fine art like that, and basically everything revolved around that point, and it kind of like dragged everyone's attention in, kind of like if you're familiar with like a black hole in space. Let's try it, shall we? I have a better idea. I'm gonna get some reference. And the real OGs, that's Original Gangsters. For those of you who always wonder what that means. And I'm just gonna draw a really crude black hole. If you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh, it was dark hole. Okay. Now I'm kind of disappointed. Oh, I guess you can do that. Well, no. Yeah. This kind of breaks my concept. It kind of breaks my concept. I hate to say, but I hope I don't get in trouble for showing a Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm just using it for reference. I wonder if Konami cares. I hope to God they don't. I guess it's dark hole. It's not a black hole, but oh well. You kind of have like a ball. I mean, even in this card, that could be like another. Well, it doesn't really fall under chiaroscuro, but when you look at this Yu-Gi-Oh card here, I think of everything's being attracted towards what I could only assume is a star nursery in the center of the card. I don't know. I'm not a astronomer, but you have like a bunch of blackness all around, and you kind of have like some light streaks. It kind of looks like a vortex to a certain extent. It probably is. Like I said, I never took a class on that or read up on it, but in short, like of this card, everything's being attracted. Everyone's eyes being attracted to like that area right there. So yeah, you could apply your line weight to that to kind of get a similar effect. So we talked about straight lines. I'm going to get rid of that just so I don't get in trouble for copyright. I hope to God. We had straight lines. We had curved lines. We talked about lines that like go thick, thin, thick. We had lines that went thin, thick, thin. I'm going to talk about another curved line that kind of let's say you start off thick, you go thin, go thick, go thin, go thick. You could add variety to it to kind of get another effect. Then you have like complete shapes, kind of like probably what comic artists would do, right? So probably what they would do first is they would draw a circle. And here's another important point that I kind of want to show. Since I have my my line weight turned on like I normally do, and since I'm drawing with my shoulder, it kind of tells a little bit of a story about me. The like certain areas when I hit it with my shoulder, like that area, that area, that area. I guess you can say. I guess you can say a good chunk of it, like that chunk. I kind of laid it thicker than other certain parts. It's not uniform all throughout. I mean, I find it kind of difficult when you're trying to draw something more complex to get a consistent line through all the way. The only way you can really do that with digital is if you turn it off. Like I just turned off my line weight, so you get the same line no matter what. That could be a really helpful tool if when you're doing construction of a thing, rather than focusing on like line weight and style. But you don't always have the benefit of that if you're working with a pencil. But if you're working with like a fine liner, like a 0.5 fine liner, you really can't inject your own style into it. Like you're going to get the same line throughout because I mean that it's just the way you lay what I can only assume is pen ink or whatever compound it uses to adhere to the surface. So yeah, I mean that is kind of a benefit of digital, but like I said, traditional, you can find a similar way to do that, but you just have to like find a pen. So back to the circle example. So we have a circle. So kind of what I believe comic artists would do is they would kind of like go over it again in certain areas. Maybe if they drew something, maybe they weren't really trying to focus on the line weight at all, but going over, like maybe they want to say near this section, they want to like bring more attention to it than any other part. So it could be difficult to do. I actually found this to be extremely difficult, rematching curves. So maybe they wanted to kind of trace or draw over it again to lay a thicker line on to certain areas to bring attention to it. You could definitely do that. That's like another method to the madness. I'm gonna close that. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. I haven't made any other practice sheets because I've been a bit stumped on what other sheets to make. But if you did have a suggestion, I could make another one. Just ask in the comments below. But I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you for listening.